Welcome to Solutions with Sagamore, a podcast produced by the Sagamore Institute that features solution-oriented conversations about key issues facing communities throughout Indiana, the United States, and the world. I'm your host, Tim Swearens. In this episode, Sagamore fellow Derek Gretelman discusses the future of manufacturing with Bryce Carpenter, Chief Operating and Strategy Officer with Conexus Indiana, and Andrew Berger, President and CEO of the Indiana Manufacturers Association. Derek, will you introduce Andrew and Bryce to our listeners?
Yes, well, I think you just have. It's great to have you guys here. Two very important voices in Indiana on manufacturing, very important subject for Indiana. And two big organizations, two important ones. Why don't you first talk about what each of your organizations does?
I can start, Bryce. The Indiana Manufacturers Association is the second oldest manufacturing association in the country, founded in 1901. So this year, I guess, 2026, now that we're past the new year, we're in our 125th anniversary as an organization. I took over as CEO a year ago, so I'm very conscientious of leading a group, a bunch of member manufacturing companies that's been contributing to the economic and policy life of this state for long before my time and hopefully long after. But our main focus is advocacy at the State House, policy work on behalf of manufacturers to fulfill our mission, which is to make Indiana the best place to start or grow a manufacturing business. And we've been successful, I think.
Yeah, Conexus Indiana is a nonprofit focused on advanced manufacturing and logistics, nestled within the Central Indiana Corporate Partnership, a group that's not been around quite as long as Andrew's group, but we're turning 27 in 2026. Conexus Indiana started in 2007. Our focus is really a great complement to the work that Andrew and his team do at the IMA. We are really focused on driving digital adoption and talent alignment to make sure that as Indiana AML firms continue to grow, that they can be competitive based on productivity and skills and product mixes to compete in what is an ever-growing global market.
That's right. Well, it's such a huge part of Indiana. I mean, it makes sense that there would be multiple organizations focused on these topics. I think I've got these numbers right. Manufacturing represents, 30% of gross regional product?
Yeah.
And
it's a $140 billion industry for the state. Yeah.
And then 1 in 5 of our workforce?
4 now.
Yeah.
1 in 4. Yep.
Wow.
Yeah, and those are production workers. So if you look at everybody who's actually employed by a manufacturing company, so your legal, HR, people who aren't actually involved in the process of making things, but their job and salary is coming from the manufacturing industry, the number's actually pretty much bigger than the 1 in 4, 1 in 5 that we've got now.
A statistic that we like to use that really gets a lot of traction is Indiana is more dependent on advanced manufacturing and logistics than Hawaii is tourism.
Wow, that's an interesting thought.
From a share of economy perspective.
Yeah.
Indiana's long been known as the most manufacturing-intensive state in the nation. Is that still the case?
Yep. Oh, by far. I mean, it's magnitudes of difference compared to every other state. And even if you look at kind of the industrial heartland of the U.S., the Midwest, so states like Ohio, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, we punch well above our weight because those are all economies of bigger size. The two biggest manufacturing states in the country are Texas and California. The fourth biggest is Indiana. So, and that's just by pure output, right? So, it's an intensive part of our state's economy. It's the biggest parts of the state's economy, but that really means we're a global player. And I could go on and on about what ecosystems we're part of, but it's an amazing industry here in Indiana. And it's an honor to really represent them.
We've used a couple of terms already, AML, Advanced Manufacturing and Logistics.
Yep.
Let's talk about that advanced word and what do we mean by that? Because our manufacturing industry goes back so far. Some of it's not advanced.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I know both of you have talked and written about the fourth industrial revolution. What in the world is that?
Go ahead, Bryce.
I would say that the way that when we talk about advanced manufacturing and logistics, there is a sort of commonly accepted equation on level of investment per employee. to be qualified as an advanced manufacturer and an advanced logistics company. We do a lot of work with Brookings, and they have this sort of accepted definition of level of tech investment, level of digital adoption investment per employee. Now, even within that, there's a very wide prism. Andrew and his group, they've seen hundreds of manufacturers, as are we, right?
Yeah.
There are opportunities and ways to build on your digital adoption and your advanced manufacturing and logistics journey, and it starts with digital equipment that can be connected, and then is a flywheel of opportunity and growth. That's where we've chosen to really lean into productivity, because all of that investment in technology directly leads to a more productive manufacturing and logistics company, which allows them to compete and punch above their weight. As Andrew said, the fourth largest manufacturing state in the country.
Yeah. I make give a facetious answer to this, and that's like, if you're still in business, you're probably an advanced manufacturer. But Bryce's point's
We've
right.
seen a
I mean,
few.
it's
We've seen a few.
yeah. And I've been in a ton of these companies, and there are companies. You say, okay, we see a lot of people out here moving things around on a conveyor belt. I mean, it can be dirty. I mean, especially if you're melting metal, which Indiana's a huge metal fabrication state. You're not going to see the machines that you would expect in a highly advanced manufacturing context. And those companies are everywhere. And I think that's what we're talking about. But on the transition into the fourth manufacturing revolution, I was looking back, and I pulled a study that we did, and it was Industry 4.0 is here, and that was dated 2018. So we have been kind of part of this evolution into more technology. I mean, I think since we've had manufacturing. Yeah. Adding technology, adding capital investments, that's how you grow this business. So I think it's just the next step in kind of what's traditionally been the way you become a productive, profitable manufacturing company, is that you got to upgrade your technology. You got to upgrade the skill set of your workforce. And, the successful companies do that.
The challenging and the exciting part of Indiana's economy is that you have companies like Eli Lilly, the largest life science company in the history of the world. And then you've got fourth, fifth generation small, metal stamping companies, right? So even within advanced manufacturing, we see such a wide variety of sophistication, and some of it is structural, based on, hey, they are generating just sort of core components that have been being made for 30 years, and the margins are lean. So what's the opportunity to make these investments? And then you have conversations about digital twins in the defense industry. So we have such a wide variety within the manufacturing space that, yes, there are companies that are fifth industrial revolution with work that Lilly and others are doing. But in order to keep Indiana's entire AML economy moving, we can't leave the small regionally held third-party logistics providers behind.
Bryce, you just said something we shouldn't skate past. Eli Lilly, the largest life sciences company in the history of the world. That's relatively new, just the last year or two. What does that mean for our state?
I mean, first off, Lilly has an incredible history. They were one of the founding members of the IMA. And these relationships go back just the city of Indianapolis alone. But now, because they are this global powerhouse, they're making investments all over the country. They're making investments all over the world. But the first place that they announced it was here in Indiana. And that means a huge amount to growing the business, because these mega projects, they're going to need suppliers for when they're making things. They're going to need suppliers to build the new factories that they're putting up here in Indiana. And, we hear that in our board meetings with our membership. People are selling into these construction projects. They're selling the equipment that are going to go into these factories. It's a huge value add. Now, when you have the type of growth and the size of their development, I mean, it's not without I mean, it's not a smooth process. I mean, there is a destabilizing element to this, and everybody's got to work through that. I mean, companies that are in, that Lafayette to Indianapolis corridor where a lot of Lily's investments going.
Right.
I mean, they're watching very closely because they're worried about their workforce. They're worried about the strain on the logistics and shipping industry in that part of the state. So, these are things that there's not a like, hey, this is going to go super highway awesome the whole time. But overwhelmingly, it's a positive development to the state, as you would expect.
It is interesting when you talk about Lilly, also Roche and Cook down in Bloomington, and several up in all of that life sciences. And people think about science jobs. I think about maybe marketing jobs. I think a sister organization of yours, BioCrossroads, came out with a study just a couple of years ago. I think the number was that industry alone needs somewhere between 2,300 and 3,700. I don't know if I got the number right. Manufacturing employees each year for the next 10 years. New. That number new every year for the next 10 years. And yet people are still leery of that arena. How do we get? Working for Lilly or working for Cook, I mean, they pay well. They have good benefits.
Highly sophisticated, heavily investments in technology. These are, and I would say that it's not unique. Life sciences is special, but advanced manufacturing jobs, and I know Andrew and his group talk about this well, an advanced manufacturing and logistics job is a career in Indiana. They pay well and above state national average. It is a good career for people to get into, whether you're coming out of high school or you're making sort of a mid-career transition. There are major investments being made. There's new products. There's company startups. Like these are important and meaningful careers that pay good wages for Hoosiers to have good lives with their families in Indiana. And that's one of the biggest things that we just have to continue to reiterate to people is these are not just low-wage hourly jobs. These are meaningful careers that you can raise a family on.
Yeah, and I think obviously, and you have a big company like Eli Lilly or Cook, but even amongst the smaller firms, in manufacturing, there's a path to advancement. And if you're well-trained, if you keep adding skills to your, personal skill portfolio, there's opportunities for you to grow and to get a promotion and to get added responsibility and added compensation. So, it's not just, hey, you can stay. It's a safe production job that you'll be secure with for years. I mean, there's a real chance that this can be a true career. And I see that all the time where, hey, I remember when, you were introduced to me as a new hire, a really rising star in the company, and now you're in a leadership position. And I've been at the IMA over 10 years. And it's a great thing to see, kind of the real American dream happening for these people.
How do we get young people interested? I think I just saw a stat in the CTE arena, career technical education, what we used to call vocational education. I think it was 18 program areas in CTE in Indiana. Manufacturing ranked 16th in the number. I mean, we talked about how big it is in our workforce, and yet it was up top was cosmetology and culinary and phlebotomy and how do we get these kids to start looking at manufacturing?
It's the hardest issue, and we could talk about the available training programs. I don't know if that's part of something you want to talk about here in this program, but we've got great providers. We've got great training out there. We've got great programs. The key problem is student interest in getting into these fields. And the first thing I tell a manufacturing company if they're coming to me for a workforce issue, it's like, do you have a relationship with your school system? Do you know who the CTE program lead is in your district? Like, because that is the closest pipeline. And it's I don't know what age you think kids need to start being introduced to this stuff, but middle school is what everybody keeps coming back to. Like, it's early. And, thankfully we've benefited from this, generations long industry. So you have families that are used to manufacturing as part of their lives. But you've got to convince that next generation, and there's no easy solution. Part of it's just, hey, you promote the industry. That's a big part of the things that I think both our groups do. But that is the number one challenge, to kind of change the image, change the idea that this is going to be something that I might get laid off on if the economy dips. Those are memories that die hard, and they go from parents to kids. But you do have all these great incentives, positive attributes to the industry, and that's just the message we got to get. Hard to get an 8th grader to think that way, but if they hear it enough, maybe by the time they graduate high school and are looking for their next education or work opportunity, they look at manufacturing.
Yeah, I agree with Andrew. The relationship between a manufacturer and their local school is the critical component. And we can do a lot on marketing, and we try to do a lot, and IMA does a great job of communicating and marketing advanced manufacturing. But where we see companies that have a relationship with the local school, they bring students in, they expose them to the work they do. There is absolutely no substitute for the students seeing it firsthand and seeing, most importantly, what it isn't, right?
Yeah.
They come into an Hauser and they see how advanced it is and how clean it is and how impressive it is and these cool roles that exist. And that's the greatest pipeline, is continuing to try to drive the connectivity between the company and the local school.
On your CTE question, one of the things, I forget which year it was, but they've adjusted the way those CTE programs are compensated by the state, or funded by the state, and it's tied to the data. Which is going to get the best employment outcome on a wage basis, like that. The schools get more money for those programs. So I think the system's set up. It's really just getting that student to sign up. That's the issue.
Let's talk about the L in all of this, logistics.
Yeah.
What do people mean by that? I mean, I'm sure some people hear that and they imagine, UPS, FedEx, and delivering packages and that kind of thing, but it's so much more than that.
It's what brings all of Lily's goods to market. It's what brings all of Cummins' goods to market. And Indiana benefits from having this 100-year, 150-year-old manufacturing ecosystem. Well, the best in the nation infrastructure network, most pass-through interstates, access to 80% of the population of the country within a day's drive. So we've got these natural assets. We're in the middle. We're not down jammed in Florida where you can only go one direction, right? So we've got all these assets, and because we have the goods, we've got this unparalleled system set up to support it, where it's distribution facilities. And if Tim ordered something on Amazon right now, it would be here in 7 minutes because they've made the investments to build this infrastructure network. And that's where Indiana, again, is such a leader.
Yeah, and one of the key parts of that, and it's not just 80% of the U.S. population, it's the North American economy. I mean, Indiana is part of what I call, it's centered around the Great Lakes, but Canada is a huge part of this. And this is why trade is such a tough subject for Indiana manufacturers. We're part of a global automaking center here in this state and that part of the world, Southern Canada and the Midwest. And that's based around the access to this huge and strong market in North America.
I was going to mention, because we hadn't raised automobile industry yet, and that's kind of
huge.
That's where all this got started,
it is
right?
the big one.
It's kind of funny. My understanding, tell me if I'm wrong on this, we were the center of automobile manufacturing.
We still
before
are.
Detroit.
We still are.
Numbers wise?
If you look at the percentage of manufacturing that's transportation equipment related, so we're talking aerospace and RVs and stuff too. Indiana is the national leader.
Oh,
it's not Michigan. So,
so if anyone who lives near Fishers or on 96th Street and all those roundabouts, if you have a chance to notice them, are the Auburn and the Cord and the Duesenberg. People are probably driving by those saying, what in the world is this? It was the original car name until some guy
I'll raise my hand. I think I just learned something here today.
Until some guy named Ford came along and did something up in Detroit.
Our most famous icon, Indianapolis Motor Speedway, was a test driving as how it was built originally, right?
Yeah.
So
we've been on the cusp of innovation, and I think on the innovation and becoming a global automaking. We're the only state where we have all three of the big Japanese companies have a production facility.
And I want to talk about that. Yeah. One other little note, not too many people know, I don't think. the Detroit Pistons used to be the Fort Wayne Pistons.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Because of the automobile industry is up there. Fort Wayne was bigger than Detroit back then.
That
So,
Auburn Museum in Auburn, Indiana, the Auburn Cord Duesenberg Museum, that's a good visit if anybody's up in that part of the state.
yeah, I remember back in the 80s, some guy by the name of John Mutz got into trouble because he helped bring Subaru to Indiana. And because we were, Ford and Chevy and Chrysler and all of that back then. And how dare we, bring those. But now that's kind of the center of what we do, right? Honda, Toyota, Subaru.
Subaru was the real leading edge of that because it showed that, a Japanese-owned company that's importing parts from their supply network could be supported in Indiana, and other suppliers would grow up around that production facility, or that assembly plant. And that's exactly what's happened with Toyota and Honda as well. But you still see, Ford less so, but Stellantis, Chrysler, and GM still have enormous investments in the state. They didn't get, shoved out. They took advantage of what became, this huge amount of parts suppliers and logistics networks around supporting
Delco,
that.
Allison Transmission.
Everybody's taking advantage of us, and you have the skilled workforce because people move between these auto companies. And we just had another announcement. Slade Auto is going to open up our 5th assembly plant in the state in Warsaw.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, and that's an innovative company.
Well, to your point on Subaru, we were just there last week, and 7,000 workers, 4.5 million square feet, 53 suppliers within the state.
Yeah.
It's just an incredible economic engine, and there's one of those in each corner of the state now.
So I think our listeners would have a question at this point. I can hear what they're thinking. It's like, oh, this sounds
Good for you
great,
too.
but what about robotics and artificial intelligence? Are they going to come for all those manufacturing jobs in Indiana?
That's a great question. I don't think so. It's as technology's been added, it drives growth. And right now, the numbers, the most recent kind of 18 months, we've actually seen a headcount drop, but the number of job openings in manufacturing has stayed steady. So what we're struggling to do is keep up with attrition. And that is something where, if people are worried about the strength of their, career in manufacturing or the security of it, what you need to do is to keep training and upskilling yourself and working with the new equipment. Because the jobs that are eliminated first when you have automation are the ones that people don't want to do anyway, because they're, harder physically, or they're more dangerous than what you would do. So that's what people don't want to do in these facilities anyway. This is a story that I hear regularly.
I found it interesting when I was working with the Chamber of Commerce that it seemed like the most robust companies, as you walked onto their floors, had the fewest people on them.
Some of that's dependent on the industry.
Yeah.
Okay.
Again, there's 7,000 people running around in West Lafayette making Subarus, and they are a
7,000.
highly automated
Exactly.
and advanced company. But what I would double down on is just to reiterate, AI and robotics aren't stealing jobs; they're reallocating jobs, and they're allowing the welder to be in production management, right? And so people are still the most precious asset in this state. When you have thousands of unfilled jobs, maximizing the ability for a worker to contribute to a company is the priority, not getting rid of the worker. So everything we see is, okay, let's automate the lowest skill and let's move this person into a higher skill. To Andrew's point, the employee should be open to training and learning new skills, but that helps on career trajectory anyway. But we don't hear any examples of, even with AI being deployed, of eliminating manufacturing work.
Yeah. It comes down to, do you have the revenue? Do you have the cash to make the investments? And that's not a straightforward question. There's plenty of companies that would love to include some AI processes into their manufacturing or upgrade their equipment, but you got to have the money to do it. You have to have the security of a customer base to do it, and it's let's just say a dynamic time for that type of big investment. So it's not a straightforward, by 2030 or 2040 we're going to be in this new employment range in manufacturing or any other industry. companies are, it's a shorter and shorter time frame to do your long-term planning because things are changing so fast.
So there are a couple things happening nationally I want to touch on that have got to be having an impact. Immigration and tariffs. Let's start with tariffs. Is that good or bad for us? Some people would argue it's a supply chain problem now. Other people would argue, yeah, but now we make more here.
Yeah.
Is it a little bit of both, or is it?
You want to take that, Brian? I'll weigh in. It's the number one issue of concern right now.
Okay.
Initially when the tariffs started getting rolled out, I think there was, I think along your thinking, Derek, that it's going to incentivize more domestic supply. But the issues with growth are still there. We still have not enough workers. Capital is expensive, and that's what you need to be able to grow and bring more production work. Now that trend is happening. It's happening. It was happening before Trump came in as a second term and really kicked off the trade change. A lot of that was nearshoring, so Mexico and Canada to get into the USMCA area, and we're adapt. I'm surprised about how many manufacturers have adapted to it, but I'm hearing more and more negative. I think because contracts are coming due with their suppliers, they're having to be renegotiated. The prices are going up, and inflation when it comes to production is, we're starting the price increases. It's not cooling right now, and that's the biggest worry of everybody out there.
When you have an advanced manufacturing logistics economy as large and diverse as Indiana does, it's going to be a mixed bag, right? Yeah. We talked about Eli Lilly and being the largest life sciences. They are uniquely exposed to tariffs because it's an FDA regulated process where it's not as easy as, okay, I'm a stamping plant and I'm going to change my vendor. There's a 3-4 multi-year process to change a FDA approved vendor. So it is. We see there's a lot of great instances, and then there's a lot of instances where it's had negative effects just because, again, we have so many different sectors and segments of the economy that I don't know that we get one overarching kind of thumbs up, thumbs down. Yeah, it is the top concern, though. True. It's what we hear. Yeah. We hear the most, and we say call the IMA, right? Because they do such a good job at talking about this, but it's on the forefront of everybody's mind.
Yeah, and it's really hard to work on a policy basis. I think there was some definitely understanding that there was unfair stuff going on around the world. And if this was a way to kind of address some of those imbalances, people were for that. If this becomes a permanent, hey, manufacturing is in the goods business, we're just going to tax goods more as a, hey, this is just how we raise revenue for the federal government in the U.S. now, people are less enthusiastic about that approach.
But is a part of the problem also the uncertainty of how long this will last? Because it takes a long time to stand up a manufacturing plant.
Uncertainty is a killer always.
Yes.
But if you're getting more certain that it's going to be what you're not happy with, that's not helpful either. Right. Yeah.
And we didn't touch on immigration. How is that the crackdowns on immigration? Does that impact manufacturing here much at all?
You're not allowed to employ people that aren't authorized to work in the country anyway.
Okay.
It's shrinking the available pool of workers for the overall economy, not just manufacturing. It's a hot policy issue. They're debating it at the federal government. Obviously, they're debating it at the state house. Like, how do we enforce our immigration laws better? The true negative knock-on effects is trying to get talented workers into the country.
Right.
And that happens all the time. Now, they may not have the intention to become a permanent resident or a citizen, but you need to have the free movement of people to come and do these jobs here and to set up foreign investment in the country. That's been a big part of Indiana's manufacturing success. So, again, it's an unpredictable circumstance, which isn't good for investment.
So in the last couple of minutes, I could ask you if you were a net positive or net negative on our outlook, but knowing both you guys, you're both very positive about it. But I'd love to hear what are you most excited about or most concerned about going forward, either or, just to close out.
I'm most excited about sort of the demand from people for information on how to drive digital adoption. and this recognition of that it needs to be matched by skill development within their employees. For a long time, we focused heavily on the Manufacturing Readiness Grants program, which was a great way to help companies invest into equipment, but it did not have that critical component. We talked earlier about sort of displacement because of automation and AI. Well, if you approach, okay, here's problem A, we're going to address it through digital adoption and skill development, and you work on those things hand in hand, then you don't have displacement because of digital adoption. It's part of the planning process. So there seems to be a greater recognition within the last year that any equipment investment needs to be matched with corresponding skill development within the current workforce. So that part's particularly exciting to us.
I agree 100% with that. Even if you have a manufacturing economy that's contracting, that just means competition is stronger. But thankfully, Indiana is very competitive when it comes to this investment. So even if we kind of lose, nationally, manufacturing is in a recessionary environment, which we might be right now, Indiana could still come out as a winner as companies decide a little bit more deliberately where to put those dollars. Indiana's got a great case for every dollar being spent or invested in manufacturing. The worries, I think it's workforce. Can you keep up with even your attrition as people get older and retire? That's the biggest one. And we haven't talked about it yet, so I'm not trying to throw another issue on the table here, but energy security and energy availability, because everything we've talked about with automation and digitization and AI takes more electrons than what we are probably producing right now. And, you're going to get 10, you ask this question to 10 different people in the energy industry, you're going to get 10 different answers about what the next 10 years is going to look like. But that's the key thing, I think, that is going to really make an impact. I mean, can you fuel the growth through the power consumption?
Andrew Berger, Indiana Manufacturers Association, Bryce Carpenter, Conexus Indiana. Thank you both very much.
Thank you to you.
Thank you, Andrew, Bryce, and Derek. Sagamore Institute is an Indianapolis-based think tank focused on economic and educational opportunity, national defense, and civic health. To learn more about the issues discussed today, please visit sagamoreinstitute.org. Thank you for listening.